Before we proceed further, please click on the subscribe icon and turn on the bell icon to be notified whenever I drop a new video. Secret societies. To some, the name conjures up an image of a shadowy and elite cabal meeting behind smoke-filled rooms, discussing tactics of world domination and manipulation. To others, the image of secluded men, and occasionally women, banding together in exotic garb to perform colorful ceremonies and impart hidden knowledge and fancy but incomprehensible titles upon one another springs to mind. And to others, a fanciful and convoluted figment of the imagination sprung from only the most paranoid and incredulous minds is evoked by the title. Below are the 10 most dangerous secret societies on this planet. Number 1. The Hashashan. It's perhaps ironic that we begin our review of secret societies at what has been popularly dubbed the very cradle of civilization. Perhaps not so ironic, after all. Though the time of the Hashashans is long past, their relevance is still integral to our study. Though the last of the Hashashans died over 600 years ago, their presence still lives on to this day, embodied in modern terrorist organizations, rogue mercenaries and military juntas, embodied in the very heart, brains and sinews of anyone who would seek to control, dominate and tyrannize through the means of force, bloodshed and menace to pursue any political, religious or economic agenda, regardless of faction or sect. In fact, their very name lives on to this day, entered into everyday language: assassin. Origins of the Hashashan. The old man of the mountains. There is no accurate date or records for the birth of Hassan I Saba. Hassan was born in Persia in the 1050s to a Imami family, and was raised with the tenets of that faith in the city of Ray, where the future Grand Master also studied alchemy, philosophy, astronomy, and it is rumored, certain occult doctrines practiced by renegade Muslim imams. Hassan was converted to the doctrine at the age of 17, eventually swearing allegiance that same year to the Fatimid Caliphate in Cairo. It was in Cairo that Hassan studied in depth with leading missionaries and clerics of Ismailism, eventually earning a reputation as one of the most fervent and devoted disciples of the Ismaili creed. One account tells of Hassan's meetings with a group of heterodox Muslims in Syria, where he was trained in the principles of magic and sorcery. Hassan served as the secretive and omniscient Grand Master of the order for 35 years until his death in 1124. During this time as the Grand Master, they recruited men in underlying villages and initiated them into the doctrine. Each convert to the order was expected to go through a series of 9 initiatory degrees, which I like to call 9 brainwashing stages. Crusading knights spun endless tales regarding their ruthless and mercenary foes, giving rise to the eventual adoption and Latinization of the term assassin. And then, it came to a halt. The fall of the Hashashans. The fall of the Hashashan Empire came about with a Mongol attack at Alamut in 1256. Their fortress and paradise, seized. Their spirits and numbers, diminished substantially. The few remaining members spread out into Syria, where they acted as mercenaries for hire by local sultans and emirs. There are some speculation that the influence of their internal teachings lives on to this very day, embodied in certain sects of the Iranian Mandean faith and Kurdish Yazidi religion. But the prestige that the Hashashan enjoyed for almost 200 years is now a fleeting memory. Or is it? Legacy of the Hashashans. As stated earlier, the Hashashan fell in the 13th century, yet their ethos of carnage and terror continues to this day. And it is embodied in recent brutalities committed worldwide by such outfits as Al-Qaeda, the Islamic State and Boko Haram. It is not exclusive to Islam, by and large, a peaceful religion, and claims allegiance to neither sect nor country. It is in the hearts of those who willingly perpetrate evil under the guise of an ulterior agenda, and therein lays its strength. It is perhaps the ultimate secret of any secret society. Power, at any given cost. Number 2. The Illuminati. The Illuminati, the very name is enough to cause fear and revulsion in the heart of any sensible, free-thinking individual. Rumored to be the impetus behind both the American and French revolutions of the 18th century as well as both world wars. The notion of a secretive shadow organization of puppet masters pulling the strings behind every social movement, progressive or not, and every mass calamity has been the source of mass speculation and paranoia throughout history. And perhaps no other society has been so successful in shrouding themselves in mystery, deceit and misinformation than the Order of the Illuminati. So successful that millions of Americans don't even realize they hold their trademark right in the folds of their wallet, the dollar bill. Look at the backside and observe the enigmatic eye in the pyramid, crowned by the banner, Novus Ordo Seclorum, the New World Order. Origins of the Illuminati. The story of the Illuminati begins in Bavaria in 1770. A Jewish convert to Roman Catholicism, Adam Weishaupt was elected as professor of canon law at the University of Ingolstadt, a chair traditionally held by a Jesuit priest. Despite a subsequent conversion to the Jesuit faith, the 22-year-old Weishaupt still found himself victim of repeated rebukes and character assassination by Jesuit colleagues and superiors. Rather than retaliate, the prank-minded Weishaupt decided to form an exclusive cadre of so-called enlightened ones, or perfectibilists. The order soon grew support from some of the leading political, literary and social figures of the time. Pressure from both the Catholic hierarchy and Masonic lodges forced then-ruler Karl Theodor to ban the Illuminati altogether, and the order was announced as dissolved in 1785. Yet there is substantial evidence that this dissolution was simply a ruse to hide the activities of the order internationally, particularly in France and the nascent America, where Illuminati tenets and doctrines had a substantial influence on both revolutions. Weishaupt himself fled to Gotha, where he was granted amnesty by Duke Ernst II and from which he continued his base of operations until his 1811. Weishaupt drew initial support from the banking dynasty of the Rothschilds, and there is considerable evidence that members of the family took formal initiation into the lodge at its early stages. The Illuminati in doctrine and practice. The initial statutes of the Illuminati state that their goal is to put an end to the machinations of the purveyors of injustice, to control them without dominating them. And while that may have been true in a progressively enlightened 18th century, those ideals were corrupted by parties seeking absolute greed and absolute power. These days, the agenda behind the Illuminati's machinations include: Number 1. The establishment of a one-world government, complete with one world military and police and one centralized currency. Number 2. The establishment of a centralized bank controlling all financial transactions. Number 3. Advanced microchip monitoring of citizens as a need for surveillance and control. Number 4. An absolute totalitarian state in which freedom of expression is prohibited and dissenting opinion will be stifled. Bloodlines of the Illuminati. As mentioned earlier, the Illuminati is headed by 13 distinct bloodlines. Much speculation and theories of these bloodlines have been made, relating them to everything from the 12 tribes of Israel mentioned in the book of Genesis, including the lost 13th tribe commonly held to be the Hazar tribe, to the 12 signs of the zodiac. The 13 bloodlines are: Number 1. The Rockefeller bloodline. Number 2. The Rothschild bloodline. Number 3. The Kennedy bloodline. Number 4. The Astor bloodline. Number 5. The Bundy bloodline. Number 6. The Collins bloodline. Number 7. The DuPont bloodline. Number 8. The Freeman bloodline. Number 9. The Lee bloodline. Number 10. The Onassis bloodline. Number 11. The Reynolds bloodline. Number 12. The Russell bloodline. Number 13. The Van Dunn bloodline. Number 3. Freemasonry. Next to the Illuminati, of whom they are closely associated with, no other society has spawned more rumors and allegations than the Freemasons. The institution of Freemasonry describes itself as a beautiful system of morality, veiled in allegory and illustrated by symbols. Such a description is both highly suggestive and, while open to interpretation, seems to pose no immediate threat to the general population other than a collection of bizarre symbolism masked by a frequently transparent veil of secrecy. Both the rituals and doctrines of Freemasonry have been openly published, and accessible to even non-affiliated parties. Freemasonry, which today only numbers approximately 1.2 million members in the U.S. The origins of Freemasonry. The first organized Masonic activity is generally held to be founded on June 24, 1717 with the assembly of the First United Grand Lodge of England. Over the next 70 years, Freemasonry began to grow considerably among all walks of life throughout Europe. As the popularity of Freemasonry grew, so did the need to formalize established constitutions, dictates and most famously, their degree structure and rituals. Space permits us from delving at all into the structure of these ritual or degrees, other than to state that they are rooted in biblical, classical and Kabbalistic symbolism and historical allegory. Practice and dangers of Freemasonry. In Freemasonry, it demanded the worship of a supreme being, whom Masons to this day refer to as the great architect of the universe. There's little reason to assume that all Freemasons are behind a single unified plan for global domination. The real danger in Freemasonry is not necessarily that of unmitigated evil lurking behind the sanctum sanctorum of your local Masonic lodge. No, the true danger is how quickly seemingly noble virtues can be denigrated to the spheres of greed, crime, bigotry, murder and the corruption provided by unassailable power. And how quickly those virtues can be integrated into a schematic of control and domination on a global political and social scale. Unless, of course, those noble virtues were simply part of that schematic all along. Number 4. The Knights Templar. Perhaps no other secret society is enjoying a greater resurgence in popularity currently than the Order of the Knights Templar. The historical Knights Templar cut a broad swath through the collective unconscious, at once evoking the gallantry of the Crusades, the exotic mystique of journeys into foreign lands and pathos for their ultimate demise. Hardly a bad reputation for an order that was disbanded and burned at the stake over 700 years ago. Origins of the Knights Templar. The poor fellow soldiers of Christ and of the Temple of Solomon, more commonly referred to as the Knights Templar, came about in 1120 at the urging of French Knight Hugues de Payens, who had approached both the king and Patriarch of Jerusalem to grant an official monastic order for the protection of pilgrims visiting the holy city of Jerusalem. At the time of their inception, the Templars only numbered 9 in their ranks, all of whom had sworn a specific vow of poverty. Just 30 years later, their numbers had swollen to the thousands and were prosperous enough to lend money and credit to both citizens and government figures alike. By 1307, rumors began to abound about the Templars' secret teachings. They were reputed to regularly engage in homosexuality, both denying the divinity of Christ and both trampling and spitting on the cross as part of their initiation rites, and worshipping a strange bearded idol of a head, alternately, the head of a goat they referred to as Baphomet. These charges have never been proven. But they have also never been disproven. Homosexuality has been a common practice among soldiers who, traveling long distances of many years without wives, seek some form of gratification, and may have been more prevalent among warrior monks sworn to uphold a vow of celibacy. The fall of the Knights Templar. King Philip ordered the arrest of several hundred Knights Templar, including their Grand Master Jacques de Molay, and formally charged them with heresy, financial corruption, bribery and secrecy. Their assets were seized, members were tortured and burned alive at the stake, including de Molay, and the order was formally dissolved. The few Templars who survived the extermination went underground into recluse, re-emerging a few years later to forge alliances with other military Christian orders prevalent in Europe at the time, such as the Order of Teutonic Knights and the Knights of St. John. The Templars may have died in the most ignominious of manners. But their legacy, and some say their secret teachings, continue to this day. Sometimes in the most sinister form imaginable. The Priory of Sion. The Priory of Sion fulfills the ultimate archetype of a secret society, a hereditary and generational group of French moneyed elite who claim a lineage directly back to the Knights Templar guarding a central and highly damaging secret. A secret so damning, it could bring down the foundations of Christianity itself. Namely, the Priory of Sion holds that Jesus did not die on the cross but survived, and furthermore, established a bloodline with the otherwise vilified Mary Magdalene that formed both the Merovingian dynasty, and through successive generations, the Templars themselves. They purport that this bloodline is the true secret behind the Templar persecution, and that they are sworn to preserve this secret bloodline. Number 5. Skull and Bones. The College Fraternity. A collegiate staple, synonymous with good-natured hell-raising, wacky pranks and hijinks, hazing rituals and veritable wading pools of cheap beer. What is it about Skull and Bones that strikes both fear and silence in all but the most casual observer? Is it the death-obsessed emblems surrounding so much of their fantastic lore, including rumors of harboring the mortal remains of some of America's most beloved heroes? Is it the tight-lipped secrecy that surrounds the group, so much that questioning rumors of affiliation has resulted in more than a handful of job firings? Or is it a historically traceable connection between its members and the upper echelons of international power, a power that has grafted itself by dint of affiliation to key leadership positions in the very same groups we have been covering to date? Origins of Skull and Bones. Technically, the Skull and Bones Society is not an undergraduate fraternity. Membership is by invitation only, and only extended to 15 inductees a year, and for that solely within their junior year. Furthermore, both current and historical membership rosters are kept completely private. There is no official mission statement for the Skull and Bones Society, and the organization refuses to divulge their activities. The Skull and Bones Society was founded in 1832 as the Order of Skull and Bones, or Bones, as it is informally referred to. Controversy of Skull and Bones. As early as 1873, allegations were being lodged against the group, who informally call themselves bonesmen. Serious criminal charges have been lodged against the group, alleging that grave robbing was a regular initiation practice for prospective candidates. Still others have lodged the allegations that rape and kidnapping are also commonplace initiatory trials prospective candidates are expected to undertake in order to prove both their worthiness as well as their identifiably elite natures as future leaders in the fields of politics and industry by placing themselves outside the confines of the law, silencing their victims with immeasurably deep funds. The New World Order is, of course, a phrase most commonly associated with the Illuminati. And it is equally indicative of the ultimate goal of all globalist and international institutions who strive to forge a new era, perhaps one of peace, justice and prosperity. But only to those who can afford it. Dangers of Skull and Bones. It is all too tempting to view Skull and Bones as a breeding ground for future recruits into the Illuminati, or conversely, more overt societies such as the Trilateral Commission, the Council on Foreign Relations, or even the CIA. During the regent degree of the Illuminati, the candidate, after being directed to a skeleton, is asked whether there lies the body of a king, nobleman, or beggar. His expected answer is that the character of being a man is the only one that is of importance. The legend engraved on the inner chamber of the Skull and Bones tomb reads: Wer war der Thor, wer Weiser, Bettler oder Kaiser. O Barm, O Breik, I'm Tod gleich. A rough translation of which is, who was the fool, who the wise man, beggar or king. Whether poor or rich, all's the same in death. Number 6. Bohemian Grove. In the Bohemian Grove secret cult, some of the most powerful and elite leaders in world politics are gathered together to reenact their ancient pagan forefathers' rites of drinking copiously and unrepentantly around a bonfire loomed over by a massive owl, the ancient Greco-Roman herald of knowledge and secrecy. There are more sinister myths surrounding Bohemian Grove, those of sinister Luciferian rites lorded over by wealthy politicos hell-bent on world domination and infant sacrifice. What is it about Bohemian Grove that invites such wild and far-fetched speculation? Origins of Bohemian Grove. Bohemian Grove emerged from a private but informal club of artists, journalists and writers known as the Bohemian Club. It's worth noting here that the owl has a myriad different meanings from culture to culture. The owl represented the underworld, the overseer of souls through the subterranean hallways of death. And given that many of the top players over the years at Bohemian Grove have been linked to not only the shadowy echelons of power and control but assassination and wholesale murders under the guise of national wars and elaborately prestaged accidents. Controversy of Bohemian Grove. One of the central rites of Bohemian Grove is the ceremony known as the cremation of care, which invokes the figure of Bacchus, e.g., the Greek Dionysus, god of divine intoxication, ecstasy and vision, as patron of the grove, to rise from beyond the dead. It is interesting to note that grove itself is a term used by adherents of the modern witchcraft movement, also as a court of learning, with inner groves reserved only for the elect initiates of a coven. But a more serious charge has emerged surrounding the club since the 1980s, that of many grove members' predilections for prostitution, particular of an excessively seedy kind. Sex workers, and it is worth noting, both female and male, have told allegations, perhaps graciously, perhaps fearfully, refusing to name names in all but a few cases, of lavish S&M-themed gatherings in the outer reaches of the camp that involved forced degradation, humiliation and forced injury. Dangers of Bohemian Grove. When all is said and done, it's easy for the rational, incredulous observer to dismiss many of the more creative implications of the Bohemian Grove phenomenon, say, an annual gathering of reptilian overlords involved in international human sacrifice trafficking trades, as nothing more than a rather convoluted flight of fancy. The alleged Satanism of Bohemian Grove, if it exists at all, is but a mere metaphor for the blood-laden trail left behind by greed, omniscient authority and globalization. Its cultists are hardly hooded diabolists out of a poorly scripted horror film, but the same power brokers and puppet masters who have served avarice in all its twisted forms. Number 7. The Committee of 300. When it comes to the Committee of 300, we are straddling the line between fiction, exaggeration and historical possibility. In literature pertaining to secret societies and conspiracy theories, the Committee of 300 is sometimes overlooked or understated. Certain researchers simply assume that the committee is simply another code name for Illuminati, and use it interchangeably. Origins of the Committee of 300. Generally speaking, many theorists attribute the Committee of 300 to a quote from murdered German industrialist Walther Rathenau in a 1909 article when he stated, 300 men, all of whom know one another, direct the economic destiny of continents and choose their successors from among themselves. Goals of the Committee of 300. Number 1. A one-world government meant with a singular currency, singular police, military force and absolute and unquestionable authority. Number 2. The abolition of national identity, as tantamount to the formation of a singular world state. Number 3. Establishment of technological advancements in mind and populace control. Number 4. To bring about the end to all industrialization and the production of nuclear-generated electric power in what is known as the post-industrial zero-growth society. Number 5. To suppress all scientific and medical development except for those deemed beneficial by the committee. Number 6. To cause, by means of limited wars in advanced countries, and starvation and diseases in the third world countries, the death of 3 billion people by the year 2050. Number 7. To weaken the moral fiber of nations and demoralize workers in the labor class by creating mass unemployment. Number 8. To cause a total collapse of the world's economies, engendering political chaos. Number 9. To take control of all foreign and domestic policies of the U.S. Number 10. To give the fullest support to supranational institutions such as the United Nations, the International Monetary Fund, IMF, the Bank of International Settlements, the World Court, making local institutions less effective by gradually phasing them out or bringing them under the mantle of the UN. Number 11. To penetrate and subvert all governments, and work from within them to destroy the sovereign integrity of the nations represented by them. Number 12. To organize a worldwide terrorist apparatus. The sudden rise of militant groups such as ISIS, Al-Qaeda, Boko Haram and Al-Shabaab are no accident. Number 8. The Society of Jesuits. In the dimly lit caverns of secret societies, no institution seems more out of place than the Society of Jesus, or more popularly known, the Jesuits. With a global population of some 18,000 adherents, the Jesuit order are one of the most visible and well-known defenders of the Roman Catholic faith in the world today. Jesuits have been plagued by recent sex scandals occurring both in the U.S. and abroad. As damning as these scandals may be, and it needs to be stated that rumors of sexual abuse within the Catholic Church are from a wholly modern occurrence, but has been alleged for well over 100 years now, there may be more that the Jesuits may need to answer for than charges of sexual molestation and rape, as horrific as they are. Origins of the Society of Jesuits. The Society of Jesus was founded by St. Ignatius of Loyola, a Spanish knight who had been wounded during the Battle of Pamplona in 1521 and subsequently experienced a religious conversion, later recounted in his famed spiritual exercises. In 1534, Ignatius and 6 other pilgrims announced the formation of the Society of Jesus, professing vows of poverty, asceticism, chastity and strict and absolute obedience to the rule of the Pope in the Holy See. Controversy of the Society of Jesuits. The earliest criticism of the Jesuits was published in 1612 as the Monita Secreta Jesuitis, or Secret Instructions of the Jesuits, now widely considered a hoax. It alleges, among other things, that Jesuit clergy must acquire wealth for the society by any means imaginable, including enticing wealthy men to enter it and will the society their estates, convincing rich widows to endow their assets to the society and dissuading them from remarriage, and the wholesale slander of other monastic orders. One account states that a Jesuit called to the rank of command swears an oath of fealty not to God or to the betterment of mankind, but to the direct authority of the Pope, whom is viewed as the mortal representative of the Lord on earth. The Catholic Church and the CIA have long enjoyed a mutually respectful relationship, and some say, a mutual vying for power. Both Vatican funding of covert CIA operations as well as CIA sponsorship of the traditionalist Opus Dei movement, which helped infiltrate and combat communist sympathies during the Cold War, has been ably documented. Number 9. The Trilateral Commission and the Bilderberg Group. In the altogether elusive lore of secret societies, no two entities seem more unlikely of inclusion than the Trilateral Commission and the Bilderberg Group. Both are well documented, if private, institutions whose existence as advisors on topics of global political and economic affairs have been well documented. First impressions aren't always correct. The truth is, behind their veil of seeming mundanity and discourse of fostering, growing interdependence, there is a definitive ethos of globalization that appears at times downright identical to historical Illuminati doctrine and methodology. The Trilateral Commission. Formed in 1973 by David Rockefeller. Such a society would be dominated by an elite whose claim to political power would rest on allegedly superior scientific know-how. Unhindered by the restraints of traditional liberal values, this elite would not hesitate to achieve its political ends by the latest modern techniques for influencing public behavior and keeping society under close surveillance and control. Though Stalinism may have been a needless tragedy for both the Russian people and communism as an ideal, there is the intellectually tantalizing possibility that for the world at large it was, as we shall see, a blessing in disguise. The Bilderberg Group. Within the realm of overt secret societies, the Bilderberg Group enjoys a certain notoriety as operating under policies of exclusivity and privacy. Paradoxically, it has never denied its existence, and lists annual members and chairmen of its conferences openly, even publishing its findings and reports. Yet surrounding them remains a veil of secrecy and elitism that causes the casual observer to ponder what the real motivations are behind their seemingly diplomatic and benevolent facade. The Bilderberg Conferences were established in 1954 as a private 3-day conference between approximately 60 leaders of politics, finance and industry designed to foster dialogue between North America and Europe. The dangers of internationalist efforts. The dangers of both the Trilateral Commission and the Bilderberg Groups are directly because, not in spite of, their supposed transparency. By operating in direct view of public scrutiny, they allege benevolence and diplomacy, inviting any casual observer to see for themselves what these meetings seek to accomplish. Yet, despite this factor of transparency, both organizations remain rooted in an ideology that embraces a centralized and homogeneous culture, both free of the nuances and diversity of traditional nation-states, but also fostering an interdependence on the sanctity and unassailability of a unified superpower, controlling each and every aspect of its subjects' lives and prohibiting free speech, movement, exchange, dissenting opinion and autonomy by the establishment of universal power. In essence, the most successful realization of the Illuminati dream imaginable. Number 10. Council on Foreign Relations. Since its founding in 1921, the Council on Foreign Relations has been one of the most prestigious think tanks devoted to global economic and trade policies in history. Unlike other private entities, such as the Trilateral Commission or Bilderberg Group, the Council on Foreign Relations has woven itself into the fabric of American society, becoming a deeply ingrained public informer and policy advisors most American citizens simply take for granted, never questioning how much influence this seemingly private entity has over both domestic and international politics. Origins of the Council on Foreign Relations. America had been an initial supporter of Germany during its entrance into the war, but public and government sentiment soon turned against the nation, and support was at best ambivalent, and at worst, critical after Germany's defeat. A fellowship of leading scholars, economists and political advisors had been asked to brief then President Woodrow Wilson, who had famously used the term New World Order during his 14-point speech of 1918 when he stated apropos of Germany's involvement in World War I. We wish her only to accept a place of equality among the peoples of the world, the new world in which we now live, instead of a place of mastery. Dangers of the Council on Foreign Relations. The Council on Foreign Relations represents one thread in a many-tangled web of entities that seek the creation of a centralized world economic superpower, ruled neither by the democratic interests of its citizens nor their democratically elected leaders, but by an international conglomerate of industry moguls, media figureheads, transnational corporations and elected global political leaders who seek absolute authority and absolute control over the exchange of finance, media and thought. To this end, key council initiatives, such as the implementation of NAFTA under council member and then President Bill Clinton, which benefited only those corporations large enough to buy into intercontinental trade and subjected 3 separate nations to a totalitarian restriction of economic social Darwinism in practice, and the European Union, itself a product of Bilderberg architect Joseph Redinger, were established, lulling millions of Americans into a pipe dream of greater material prosperity and alleged security, while all the while tightening its grip around their collective throat. The danger of the Council is that so many citizens refuse to acknowledge it as anything more than an established pattern in the American fabric of life. Thank you for watching. Please like, share, comment and subscribe. Don't forget to turn on the bell icon to be notified whenever I drop a new video on my channel. Till next time, have a splendid day. Bye.